So like when we first met back like 2018, 2019 timeframe, we were spending time together. Like, I'm curious, like how many private equity firms or potential suitors were you talking to at any given time?
As you go through the stages of growth, we had raised a Series A. You try to focus on execution. We were just trying to grow the business. I would say that at that time we would get probably inbound once a week to 2 weeks, so twice a month. The analyst or somebody would reach out. We certainly saw some folks at some of the sector focused conferences or what have you. And then over time, as the business grew, as our data became more consistent, as we shared our information, fast forward to 2022, prior to us running a process 3 to 4 a day.
3 to 4 outreaches a day that you were receiving.
Yes. Yeah, I think that it got to the point actually that in 2019, I believe we were in the midst of it. I actually created a quick survey, and each time I would get an outreach, which again was just once or twice a week at that point, I just send a quick response back that said, "Hey, thanks for the outreach. If you could take just 3 or 4 minutes to complete this questionnaire, I'll follow up with a time that we could meet if it makes sense, if and when it makes sense." And I would send that, and we would get, and that way I asked all sorts of questions. Who are you? What's the firm? Standard stuff. Are you an associate or a partner? What kind of checks do you write? Have you ever invested in ed tech? Do you have any non-white, non-male, partners? Any question I wanted. And to be perfectly honest, it saved me like thousands of hours, I think, in interaction. I think it saved them too. I think it was helpful for both sides. But the other thing is when we were ready to have a conversation, or we sent out our, quarterly or annual updates, it went to the right people. And so we could keep folks notified on what we were doing, and be honest about finding the right match for the work that we were doing.
Yep. When you had folks fill in that survey, and give you the piece of information, like what was your decision framework about whether or not like you should talk to them or not?
Yeah, stage of the business, it changes over the stages of the business. One thing I'll say, which was we had like 95% completion rates. People clearly, it signaled to me, if they completed it, that was useful. That was a signal that they actually took, 5 minutes to complete it. The second thing was, for us, we were an impact-centered organization, or what I've come to call being an impact-centered organization. That is, the impact that we were trying to drive drove our decision-making, and it actually helped accelerate the scale of the business. A lot of times, impact is considered code for lower returns, or code for, we're nice to have. The reality is we understood what we wanted to do in the market, and that drove our business model. It drove our financing strategy. It helped speed up our product strategy. Our operating model was really centered around our impact model. And so for our financing strategy, we wanted smart money that had experience, that could take us to the next level. Not just the check, but people who had experience in pattern recognition, maybe connectivity, that could help the business grow in a meaningful way. That's what we got with New Markets and Emerson at our Series A. And as we thought about private equity, it was really about, we had started to see market network effects, sort of a virtuous cycle in markets. So market building, that network effect, marketplace business experience was intriguing. Connectivity and experience in education. Education, people say education isn't rocket science. It's harder than rocket science. Rocket science only has 3 really laws of physics, right? And then you've got some, you need some oxygen. But basically, 3 laws of physics, you understand rocket science. Education is more complex than that. And so folks who had experience, because we knew that's where we were really focused and had a massive TAM, was where we wanted to focus to.
Why did you end up talking to, me and Naveed and like the Serent crew back in the day when you did? Like I don't know if you remember, but I'm curious, like why?
Generally, what would happen is, and I'll talk specifically about Serent, but I'd get a sense of who these folks were from the basic details. Hey, maybe there's a chance either now or in our next round or level of growth that these folks I may want to build a relationship with. That would trigger the fact that, and for me, the other thing was I get a lot more joy with more diverse groups of people, folks who challenge me, folks who bring more experience. Certainly there's nothing wrong with a bunch of white guys, but generally diversity on the partner level is was a benefit for us. We were named one of the most innovative companies in the world, and I credit that with how diverse we were, 2 to 3 times more diverse than the sector, 60% female, 43% non-white, at the time of the acquisition. So generally from there, I'd set up a conversation and look for a couple things. One, what kind of questions was I getting from an organization, and what kind of experience beyond the check, could they provide or share to help us grow? And Sarent, checked a lot of boxes: experience in the education space, smart questions about what you were seeing in the market, and a willingness to collaborate and have a conversation to engage with a CEO and an impact centered organization like ours, which could be considered antithetical or not cookie cutter to a pure scale at any cost. We believe impact drove scale, and it did for us, and that was a little bit different than a purely financial private equity partner might think about the world.
It seems like it was really who you spoke to was dependent on who the firm was and what they did, and aligning maybe their mission and experience with your company. I'm curious just on the person who did the outreach. As we think about people who hire, or firms that hire people into these roles that are doing the initial outreach, the sourcing, were you paying attention to, this is an analyst and their background is something that I don't recognize, or this is a former investment banker with 10, 20 years of experience? Were you taking that next level of kind of assessment of who was reaching out?
Definitely. So the role matters. I don't have it. I like analysts. I like investors. I like investment bankers. I just like our team more. And so I want to make sure that, it's going to be worth everybody's time. And so I had no qualms with analysts or associates doing the outreach, but I would also want to understand quickly, what the partner and decision making framework was at the organization, what the experience and expertise that the more senior folks could bring to the table on that. So when I got outreach that said, "Hey, I'm an associate. Our partner X has done this in this business, in the similar business," that was compelling to me. The other thing that usually spoke to us was coming to visit. If people had invested in organizations locally, referrals, or hey, my partner's going to be in town, would love to get 30 minutes to have a conversation. It's opportunistic. We may or may not be raising right now, but we want to talk in the future. We'd love to learn about the business. Great. That was helpful. So it did matter on the role. It certainly wasn't it didn't eliminate the conversation if it was someone lower down the organization, but I would certainly be cognizant of the types of conversation I was going to have.
So you mentioned that's all. You mentioned folks who were appealing to you often had certain characteristics, demographics, knowledge, and experience in the space to ask good questions. Were those the characteristics, or were there other characteristics of the other sorts of folks that you spent time with, outside of Serent, for instance? Like what did you find appealing in those conversations? Like what are the characteristics of those people that you said, oh yeah, I want to talk to them?
As an entrepreneur, I believe in understanding or knowing what you think success looks like down the road and mechanizing towards that outcome. That's what we try to do all the time. And so when a private equity firm, an analyst, associate, a partner, a GP, in those conversations, if they had a clear strategy that they were trying to activate, it also always felt more productive to me to have that conversation. If I had a clarity of, hey, we think this is the trend or this is where the market is going. We have some belief that, one way to grow a great business or to have impact looks like, both organic and inorganic growth with a tier one provider. That that helped me understand where the strategy was for the organization and to envision that my success and their success could be combined. That's ultimately what you're looking for as an entrepreneur if you have choices, right? The other reality is you need to run a business that is interesting, that isn't low on cash, that has the flexibility to make those decisions in order to do what's best for the company. And having that optionality was something we were blessed to be able to do.
And so it sounds like, kind of coming to the table with, not only a thesis for the space, but perhaps like concrete recommendations or thoughts about like how we might be able to add value. Am I reading that the right way?
Yes, absolutely. I was a teacher. I'm not a finance guy. Right? I didn't grow up on this. But I have learned over the years the lexicon and the way we talk in finance, right? Deal flows, valuations, check size, that type of English to English translation, I do all the time. When a private equity partner or others can do their own English to English translation and speak the education lexicon or the regulated market lexicon in a way that is authentic and real, that says a lot to an entrepreneur like me that, hey, not only we're not, just passing by, into education because right now it seems like the spreadsheets look better than the spreadsheets in healthcare
Right.
or finance or, Silicon or what have you. But actually, these are folks who can add value for me. So understanding and listening, the best way to do that is to actually be engaged in the market. So again, that's where associates and experts who can go deep into a sector, not just into the spreadsheet Olympics that are critical for the business, but not always the most compelling aspect of what's driving a lot of business leaders.
Karl, it sounds like you had a framework for the inbounds that you received. I'm thinking about it mostly as inbound emails, but I suppose if someone happened to cold call, you probably would send them that same survey and try to get the same type of information. But as we just think about sourcing and strategies and how to break through, something Dan and I talk about a lot is there's a lot of noise out there. And if you're a good company, a target that firms are after, there's even more noise. So were there any other types of distinct outreach that you found engaging? Like there are some firms that prioritize sending gifts. Did you receive any fancy bottles of wine or anything that you can remember?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of tactics. There's only one way to build trust. It's to set expectations and then go beat or exceed those expectations. And so what I liked about having initial conversations was I got a chance during those calls to set expectations. Here's what you can expect us to do this year. Here's what we're driving towards. Here's what we expect. But what would happen is, hey, can we call you in 6 months, or we'd like to follow up? If they didn't follow up or they didn't call us, that's okay. I would send out at the end of each year an update on what we did last year just to communicate, hey, we met those expectations that we set for ourselves. And even if it wasn't top of mind, it equipped us to, when we had that next conversation, we'd already started to build the trust to say, when I talk to Karl or you look at this business, they've done what they said they were going to do over the previous years. So we did some tactics to sort of set expectations and then go meet them. I always appreciated when I got those calls 6 months later and folks had clearly documented internally, you said you were going to do X million this year on ARR. I know we're not quite at the end of the quarter, but how's the business going? That they understood, what that looked like for us. And I do the same thing. How can I be most helpful for you? And what should I expect from you guys? Are you looking at new businesses? Do you expect to do any transactions? What's happening in the market? And we could share those notes in a collegial way to be helpful for each other, as opposed to, sometimes these conversations can feel predatory. I will say, gifts, kind. One example is we received one that was it was a custom bobblehead that had it was supposed to have my face on it with a suit opening up in like a Superman, under, we think you're great, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm a very much a servant leader. So it didn't really quite hit the right tone for me as a leader. But my team used to hide that thing all over the office because I basically tried to throw it away. And my assistant took it out and kept hiding it in different places in the office. So some nice wine. It certainly makes you feel like you should take the call. But I think the reality is it's that trust building that's most important.
Super helpful. If you were sitting in the shoes of a business development professional in a private equity firm today, and your job is to, like you say, build those deep trust-filled human-to-human relationships with folks over a long period of time, what would you do? Like, what would your strategies and tactics be for getting in front of those business owners?
First is to ask a couple questions so that you can start to build trust with those folks. What does success look like for you as a business and as a leader? Okay, it doesn't sound like we're a match right now, but we might be down the road if we did X, Y, and Z. Be authentic about that. The second thing that I would encourage is connectivity to what those businesses are looking for and have needs for right now. Hey, I got a couple businesses that might be, a few stages ahead of you. Would you be interested in talking with the CEO of those businesses? There's a couple partners that I know they've worked with. It sounds like you might be. Can we be helpful in making a connection or adding value right now? Techstars has a phrase that is give first. And I think that motto of sort of giving first and sort of building value as an authentic collaborator and partner is always something that I appreciated, even if that's just a chance to think differently together. It might not have immediate value, but I would encourage you to see all relationships as long term. The second an early stage business development person starts to see all relationships as long term, it becomes not about the first call or the no or the making 50 calls or shooting out X number of emails and what kind of conversion rates. It becomes, hey, I'm building a relationship, and either now or in 20 years this may have value for me from a financial or other perspective. But the reality is all these relationships are long term. And once you understand that, you start to approach it a little bit differently. Your conversations change. You have deeper, connectivity, and you get faster yeses and faster nos. You avoid the long maybes, and that's what holds up businesses and investors all over the world.